Alrighty, I think that we are. I think that we are running here. So, welcome everybody to Tabletop Journeys live. Mr. Michael Ross, Mr. Lee Winnie Camiller, gentlemen, it's nice to see you like live. I know normally we do this pre-recorded, where we all just record our individual bits and then we stitch them. No, of course we don't do that. That's silly.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a lot of work,
Do you
dude.
have
That's a lot.
signs? Yes.
That's a lot of work. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing great. Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. I wish it would stop snowing, but it's also February, so there's like
Uh,
limited bits of complaining that I can do about that. So that's
Leonika, I spoke over you, sir.
No, not at all. Actually, I was about to breathe, which I'll continue to do as I speak. So,
Let's hope so.
I can multitask.
Yes.
Hopefully.
Don't try to chew gum, though. That's where things go sideways.
Yeah, I know. That's what it all goes wrong when
Yeah.
the boy tries to grab some gum. No, things are going really well. I am excited. I've got a half a day of my Muggle life coming up, and then I am all day tomorrow in full prep mode for Total Con 39 in Marlborough, Mass. I'll be headed there Thursday. I've got 5 sessions over the course of the weekend. My youngest son is going to be with me.
Oh, nice.
We are going to be doing lots of gaming. We're going to do some more play testing on the Sea of Fire adventure as well.
Yep.
I'm really excited. I actually hit the dollar store right before recording and found some neat little, $1.25 plastic sea critters to include many little octopi, which will be
that'll be
perfect.
fun.
I'm going to prime them tonight so that after I get done with the rest of my game prep, I can paint those tomorrow night
Nice.
and be able to use those for the cuttlefish minion.
Yeah, which reminds me, I do have the updated version of Chapter 1 for you, and I got to go ahead and drop it in the shared drive here. So I will do
Yes,
that when we
I
are
will
done.
need that.
When
Yes.
we're done here.
I will need that tonight, so I am ready
Yeah.
to kind of print.
Yeah.
With 5 sessions, I'm going to prep each session separately. I actually have a separate bag for each session.
Smart.
That way I can kind of just go up to the hotel room and grab the one I need. That
Yep.
way I'm not
Yep.
breaking my back with the giant
Yep.
bag.
Are they like color coded and alphabetized and all that? Like, are they going to be?
Josh, who are you talking to?
Yes.
Yes.
I was
Each
thinking,
of my Star Trek
you're talking
adventures
to-
are in blue folders. I've got my Sea of Fire in a green folder. Yes,
Yeah.
all my adventures are color
Yeah.
coordinated. And within the binders for Star Trek, they're actually color coordinated by department for the player characters and NPCs on the good side. And then I have a separate binder, which is black for our adversaries, and they are color coordinated within.
I like it. Yeah, so I figured that was going to go either way. Either it was like that, or it was going to be no, they're all in a Piggly Wiggly bag. I mean, that's
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
that's
Yeah.
but
It's all in or all out.
It's all in or all
no
out.
half measures.
Love it.
anyway. But that's not what we're talking about tonight. Let's dive in. So the newest monster manual has come out. I think all of us actually have the special limited edition cover this time, so I don't have to go ahead and feel left out.
That was going to be my first hot take. I think the regular art's better. I think of the two, I would actually prefer the regular art this time.
Prefer the Beholder over the
Mind Flayer.
Mind Flayer. Yeah.
I mean, I ain't complaining.
Yeah.
But
I
I had my druthers. I think I actually preferred the other one.
I like the
I
limited
think
edition
you're
covers
right.
in general. I like supporting the store that way, but
I think you.
Yeah.
I think you might be right, Michael, except for when you turn them on their spine, because when I first put it on the bookshelf and all 3 of them were set next to each other, these really stood out as compared to all other versions of D&D. Like these the spines on these with the gold relief, or not relief, but the gold the gold lettering, and on the blue, the red, and were really good. In fact, I did not have the special cover on the Player's Handbook. I am gonna go get that this weekend because I can't. Like I said, all in or all out. There are no half measures or 1/3 measures, as it were.
Well, that is a nice hot take to go ahead and start first, because I mean that's not one that I had heard. But that Beholder art on the regular cover is smoking hot.
Smoking.
Yeah,
It's hot. Like there's no doubt about that. In the if anybody looks in the title card for this episode, you'll see I've got both images up there. And like it's the Beholder cover is smoking hot. So that's very interesting.
Going back to something Michael said when we were talking about the DMG, It also kind of and even in that comment, it was a bit of a callback to an earlier point where we spoke about how some of the really cutesy artwork from some of the tracking sheets or whatever wasn't really our bag. They were nice art pieces, but they weren't what we were looking for.
Right.
There were several pieces of art within that book that were right on point. But this is what I want out of a beholder. This one right here is what
Oh,
I want
a-
to see, and
abjectly
the way
terrifying.
it's
Yeah.
depicted with all the other monsters and critters around it and lording over that which is about to be devoured. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
This sets the stage,
Terrifying. Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
stage is bloody.
Yeah, yeah, and and honestly, I think that that's something that the Mind Flayer is missing. Honestly, right? Like the Beholder looks aberrant and alien and grotesque and all of the things that a Beholder is. The Mind Flayer is almost too slick. It's almost like too Strahd esque. It has a kind of it's more graceful than I would have expected a Mind Flayer to be. I really want. I think that that's in general, not to get off on too much of a tangent here, but I think in general that's something that they have never really done well with aberrations in general, is really explain how terrifying they are and how to play them terrifyingly. I think that's just one thing that like people don't naturally play alien thought very well,
Right.
and it's really hard to go ahead and give. So like if I'm giving credit where credit is due, it's also really hard to go ahead and tell someone how to go ahead and play something that A doesn't exist, and B, even if it did exist, doesn't exist on this plane of reality. Like
Right. Right. Yep.
there's a complicating mitigating factor there, and
Scottish accent, you're good.
yeah, exactly right, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And they're not all dwarves, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. There's a reason why I think the Cthulhu mythos works and holds up, because every time you see it, that's it. That's the end of the story. It's
that's
a
the end of the
done
story.
deal.
Yeah, yeah,
You don't get into it. We'll talk. We'll probably talk about this, if not tonight, in other ones. Reading one of the monsters tonight, I was struck by the fact that it was an aberration, and they did their best to explain that it was alien, it was an aberration, and its thoughts were unfathomable. I if I could count the number of times a statement like that was within a very short paragraph, it was kind of weird.
yeah.
I'm like, how many times can you tell me nobody can know what it is, but you're supposed to be telling me what it is?
Right.
Mhm.
Like, there's a fundamental disconnect, which makes that hard.
Yep.
Which is why they make better end bosses than minions.
Sure.
It is better to make the thing that controls other things that we can understand, and then have them do chaotic things. So we're like, what the hell are you doing? We may never know, but we know we got to stop you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's a reason why it works like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So for tonight in this little live look-in, we're going to go ahead and kind of talk a little bit about what our next episode on Friday is going to be like. Or we're going to dive into some of the topics that we're going to discuss in that episode a little bit here. But before we kind of get into like those big topics that have kind of been floating around, honestly, on the internet for 2-3 months at this point now, I want to let's get some like surface thoughts on the book itself. Now that all of us have kind of had a chance to really dive into it, we've had it in our hands for about a week now. In for digitally for longer than that. Luanika, let's start with you. Overall impressions of the book in general. Just some real kind of surface thoughts. Like it, dislike it, think it solved its purpose, like all that sort of stuff.
I'm gonna fight the urge to do what I usually do in these episodes and get really long-winded and get into far too much detail than I should get. And with that exceptionally long preamble,
I
I'm
was
just
gonna
gonna
say, I
say,
appreciate the 30-second preamble saying you're not gonna be long-winded.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I really liked this book. I think there's something that a monster book needs to do. It needs to provide inspiration and ideas. And as I read through this, and I have done my cursory glances, looked at a few very specific things and looked for specific things, um, followed up by kind of paying attention to the YouTube community to kind of see what other content creators are thinking. And I have a lot of thoughts on that later episodes. But what I can say is, I found myself tonight when I had a good 2 hours to or hour or so to sit through and just put the book on Speechify, so it was reading in my ear while I did other things around the house, and listen to the book. That it didn't take long before I was looking for scrap pieces of papers or ways to write down encounter ideas, adventure ideas. And look, I only got through F as far as a detailed read of this book today. And I have 3 separate campaign ideas and at least 8 different encounter ideas.
Nice.
I cannot speak to how much of a rousing success to me this book is. I didn't have that feeling when I read the 2015. I don't, or the 2014, and I don't know why I didn't, because it's not that that was a bad book, and we're talking about, in most cases, many of the same creatures. Maybe it's the artwork, maybe it's now I'm deeply into content creation, so I am focused on things more, or maybe it's just a combination of all of the things that have led to this book. Maybe even though I dislike having this last, maybe it's the wait for it that has me with bated breath. And now that I have it, all the other tools that I know about, now it's like, okay, how do I use this piece? Now I know how to use that piece.
Mm.
And that's kind of an interesting thing that I did not anticipate.
Yeah.
I anticipated thinking it was going to be cool and mad that I didn't get it earlier. In retrospect, I'm almost glad I had 6 months to get everything else before I had these pieces, because now I know exactly what I need to do, how I need to do it, and how to make it hot, hot, hot.
Interesting. That's an second hot take of the night. Yeah,
Second hot
that's
take of the night,
very,
right off the
very
rip, baby.
interesting. And I wish that I only wish that that was a coordinated effort on Wizard's part, that they meant to do that, because
Yeah, they tripped into it. I
they
don't
tripped
think it was
into
on
it. Yeah,
purpose,
yeah, yeah,
but they
yeah.
tripped into it.
So, how about you, Mr. Ross? What are you surface thoughts on the book? What do you think?
The art is amazing.
The art's beautiful. Hands down.
I really, really like the art. Now, there, I didn't do 1-to-1 through the whole book, but just there's a few particular monsters I went to, and pretty much I would say the art in this book is better across like
Yep.
I'm not going to say 1-to-1, but all the 1-to-1s I checked. I
Yep.
think the art in this book is better. It is something they did talk about last year at Gen Con. I mentioned I was very privileged. I got to go to a release thing. They talked about the book, and one of the things that they wanted to do was to try to show the creatures in sort of a world or in sort of an action. So they're not just like a static profile, almost like a police lineup, standing there with a like the little nameplate, but they're always doing something. And that way the art can be more evocative, not just in how it looks, but what it's doing. And I think they nailed that across the board. So love the art. And that's not to say I don't like the art in the other book. I think the
Sure.
choice to show these all in action, absolutely the right choice.
Yep. Yep. I would thoroughly agree with that. I think if I can, I'm in thorough agreement with both of you on this, right? That I think that this is a better monster manual than the 2014 version, right? In a variety of ways. And I think the way that I can kind of sum up why I think it's better is that I think that it is a more complete book than the 2014 book. The art is better. The places where they decided to go ahead and inject narrative was better. The places, some of the, we'll get into some of the choices that they made and why they may or may not have been a little strange, but I think in general, I too was, for an episode that we're going to record in about an hour from now, I too was doing a deep dive in some monsters, and the one that I ultimately settled on was the one that I thought got a really interesting narrative twist that I did not expect coming, but I think really fits. I was really intrigued to kind of dive into that, and then to kind of see how those narrative changes were supported in the mechanics and the way that they kind of laid this out. The whole kind of monster family construct that they've put together, where it's like now you have 7 different kinds of kobolds or whatever to go ahead and pick from when you're building a kobold encounter. So it's not 20 of the same kobold. They now have a little bit of variation, which I think is going to be interesting, and I'm curious to see how that plays at the table. But I think that it's going to be I think that there were some very interesting choices that really made this a much more complete book than I think than we had previously. And I'm curious to see how it plays at the table. So, all right. Well, I'm gonna very craftily here shift the scene here so we can go ahead and get into those 4 kind of big points that we're going to be discussing on next week's episode here. So the first one kind of on the list. I know Michael and Lewinicki, you guys didn't see the screen shift, but I promise you the screen just shifted into something cool. So the first one here.
Oh, I felt it.
Yeah.
That was this.
So,
I was rolling with it.
So the first one here, Lewinika, and a hat tip first of all to you, because you're going to make Michael and I look really, really good when we do this episode, because you have done yeoman's work putting together a tremendous amount of research into all of these various points, and bugging us continually for about 3 months to go ahead and watch videos and stuff. So that's.
I have practiced going, oh,
Yep. Yep.
so that I
Mm.
can participate.
It
Yeah.
was yeah. Your studious face is on point tonight, Mr. Ross. Really,
Yes.
When I
yeah.
stroke my beard thusly, does it make it seem like I interesting? Okay,
Well,
sorry.
I've been using this great beard balm, but they don't sponsor us,
Yeah.
so I won't go into names. But
So,
so, hashtag
so
call your boys TTJ.
before we actually get into the point, we have our Patreon supporter Dave Rideout is in chat,
Oh,
and
hey,
he
Dave.
just posted a
Hey,
comment.
hey
So first of
Dave.
all, hi Dave, how you doing? I wanted to go ahead and throw his comment up here and just kind of see. So he said that his first take was this: it seems to be written for people who already know D&D lore. By separating out demons, devils, dragons, slod, etc., they don't have any text describing them as a whole. So a new player, for example, won't know the difference between demons and devils, which is very, very true. That is true. I think that their thought was that all the lore rather that they put into the Dungeon Master's Guide scratches that itch. So they didn't feel like they had to go ahead and reprint it in this book. I think that's kind of my first thought on that. But here's the thing too, is that we also know that the Dungeon Master's Guide left some stuff on the table too, and did not have things that we wanted. So if they weren't going to put them in this book and they didn't put them in the last book, where are they? We'll get into that in a second. But I think that's a really good point, Dave.
I can throw
Dave,
in another hot take of my own. I have no reason to believe this other than just my brain. I think the part of the reason they did that is because, as I already mentioned, the art is amazing, right? Those dragon art pieces are the centerpiece of the book. Like every dragon has just some amazing art. I think they didn't want to put all those pieces of art together. They wanted to spread them out, so they reverse engineered putting all the dragons alphabetical, not by group. But if you're going to do that, it makes sense to do them all that way. So my conspiracy
Interesting.
theory is it was an art layout decision.
I mean, as an art
I had
layout
not
guy,
considered that. That would
yeah,
be hot take number 3 because
Yeah.
that actually makes a lot of sense.
yeah,
Because otherwise, you'd have them page after page after page after page right in the center and or center
in the
left, as it
front
were.
third, honestly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that
Because those
yeah,
dragon pieces they're all
they're
amazing,
gorgeous.
and now they're
They're
spread
gorgeous.
out throughout the entire book.
Yep,
The
yep.
black dragon one,
Oh,
Oh my goodness, yeah.
yeah.
So
it is my favorite dragon, and that artwork is probably one of my favorite black dragon pieces of art I have ever seen. Like
interesting.
ever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
So
I actually have a take on that, and Dave, thank you for the comment because it does lead to something I've been thinking about, and I'll have to do more research, and we'll definitely dig into this more on my vlog and in future conversations. If it comes up, I will definitely do that. By the way, hit us up on Discord and in our various chats, and we'll yap at it as well. For anybody listening, as well as Dave. But one of the things that I've been picking up on, specifically since I started talking about the Forgotten Realms book and started releasing small amounts of information UA and a few little minor conversations that and comments that have been made, is I believe that some of the things we think are really, really light on lore is done to make them campaign world agnostic. And then as they release campaign gazetteers or whatever the title they'll be using with this advanced edition is, that's where they'll be filling in the specifics for that campaign world. Bearing in mind, specifically with dragons, they've got a dragon book coming this year. Forgotten Realms, things that might have been closer to unique to that realm, they've got a book coming out for that
yeah,
this year.
yeah, they've already released the
And
UA for it. Yeah,
right, so I have a sense that we're going to see something akin to what Palladium did years and years ago, where they had a whole series of books on the demon devil, the fiend, the devils and demon war kind of thing,
Blood
where they had
War,
a whole series of books on
or
it.
is it the Blood
Yeah,
Pact War?
the Blood Pact War or whatever. So I have a sense that we're either going to get a campaign book kind of dealing with that, or we'll get some kind of book that delves into that a little bit more, and that's when we'll start getting some of those um, specific creature type lores will be in those type of books versus the generic. Here's the basics.
right.
Here's what you need to go with, and that way you don't have to tie it to any specific world. You can take what very is here very little, and in your world, if there's no difference between demons and devils, you just got two people who choose a different name. If you want them to be tied in some unique way, the DMG has some of that info, and there's any number of other sources within WotC itself and outside of WotC to do that. I think it was done more because they want it to be I don't want to say bland because I don't think they are bland, but I do think they did not get very specific, and I do think that was a conscientious and intentional design choice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
we sort of touched on it before, but the idea of like moving somewhat away from Forgotten Realms, like we kind of talk about how that seemed like a little bit unusual for some of the other books. I think you may be onto something there that it's laying into more of a homebrew first mode, or
Yeah.
we don't have an official setting. We have here's several, but you're
Yeah.
probably going to homebrew your own. So yeah,
Well, that's a
I
very
like that.
Greyhawk concept too. Like that's,
Yeah,
that's kind of a very Greyhawk concept, is that everything is everything is custom. There is no, we're going to give you some adventures to go ahead and hang some stuff off of, but there is no it's not like the Forgotten Realms where everything is so explicitly already known, and sometimes
mm,
trying to carve a campaign out of that isn't canon can be tricky. So,
yeah.
all
Yeah.
right, let's dive into the first. We're not going to dive in, actually. Sorry, let us.
Let's
We're going to do the
yep,
preview
breeze
of our
through.
topics, the
Wait,
preview of what we're going to go ahead and discuss about next. And so the first topic on Mr. Miller's list was NPC humanoids and monster type shifts. So obviously there has been a lot of that in this book, where and Lunik, I know you kind of have a theory on why so many things are no longer humanoids,
yep.
specifically. But what else? What other thoughts do you have on this piece?
So, one big brouhaha in the content creation community and in the OSR community over this issue, leaning specifically into orcs, which I think is odd that they don't talk about any of the others primarily, but it's orcs that show up on YouTube a lot. But the idea for me, and what I really think led the charge here, was to get rid of some things that I personally have been finding problematic for years. The concept of monster harvesting, uh, sapient individuals, is bothersome to me. Uh, the concept of universally evil cultures is bothersome to me. Uh, I'll go so far as to say it's not bothersome. I find it to be fundamentally wrong. And I refuse to run games that have that at its core.
Mm.
I will alter those things considerably. Now, I love Evil Drow as much as any OSR GM from the Wayback Machine ever has. I just refuse to say it's all Drow. For me, in the game, in my homebrew world, it is 8 houses. They just happen to be the 8 houses who are in control, and they're the 8 houses that deal with the surface world. So that's why you see that. And I've been very explicit. I have shown other characters to show this is not everyone, this is these ones.
Yeah.
And I think this was a move to do that. Where I think they let it go, and let me backtrack, they basically removed all humanoid monsters from the game. There are no humanoid monsters. What you have are NPCs, which are humanoids. And what you have are former humanoid monsters that have been moved to other monster types. Goblins are fae.
Yeah.
Githyanki are aberrations. Aarakocra are elementals. Lizard folk are elementals. And there's lots of people who have some interesting things about that. I get it. They wanted to put it somewhere because it was a very cool and fun player character class, but they didn't know exactly where to put it. I'm fine with it being an elemental. It's weird, but whatever. I think it's fine. I understand why they did it, and I'm here for it. I think it was a good choice for a whole lot of reasons, even if I didn't like that specific monster type, right? But they've moved all those things. But where I think that WotC let us down is they did not explicitly say, now that you have all these NPC stat blocks that can be any humanoid species, how do you differentiate them? It's kind of in there and it's spread out and it's not well defined, but I have been doing some research again, mostly today, but in the last couple of days, thinking how I would do this. And the answer is go into your player's handbook, take whatever the species trait is, and just apply it to the stat block. Done is done.
Yeah.
Now, if you as a GM want to say they're all humans at base, so you don't add the human stat block, which is crazy powerful, that makes sense to me. That's a GM choice based on who they have at their table and what level of play they're at. If you're playing a higher level game, throw that trait in there. If you're playing tier 1, don't. Those NPCs will be nasty
Right.
if they get all that human stuff, right?
Yeah.
But that makes a difference. You put in those dwarven traits on any of those stat blocks, you now have a dwarven captain of the guard. You now have a dwarven druid. You now have a dwarven cultist. You throw in one of the other humanoids, say Goliath. You now have a Goliath cultist.
Yeah.
That's scary as heck, by the way.
Yeah.
Basically take your humanoid species traits, apply it to the stat block, and you're good to roll. I think they let us down by not making that explicit. I think they let us down by not having a way you could generate an NPC within D&D Beyond and do that for yourself to make it seamless as you go to play through their maps feature and use their encounter builder, because it's not easy to do. It's something that is likely to get lost in the froth. And I think that's why we see the brouhaha that we're seeing, because they weren't explicit.
Yep.
And I do believe that is exactly what they were intending.
Yep.
Yeah,
Anything to
I
add to that,
agree
Michael?
with you. I think it's just to touch on again. I think it's weird that there are not monster creation rules in this game or in this book, but I think that is a conscious decision that lies that is married to what you talked about. There is another book coming or another supplement, a D&D Beyond article somewhere where they're going to talk about building your own, mixing and matching,
Yeah.
putting these things together. But there should have been a version, even if it was a condensed outline, more coming version. To just not have it feels weird.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm gonna. So that was actually the second topic on the list here was the
Okay.
monster creation rules. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
appreciate you
I,
previewing
I
that.
did that on I segued, Josh.
Yeah,
Come on, man.
exactly, which is
You
why
gotta
I
pick up what he's laying down, brother.
I picked up the baton and I ran with it. I mean, so I'm gonna go out and say kind of my feelings on the monster creation rules. I really don't think that it's as big a deal as people are saying, because there are monster creation rules in the 2014 rules. They're in the DMG. It's how you create a monster. I think what this DMG gives us is how to build better encounters, and the 2014 rules already show us how to go ahead and build monsters. And like maybe it's just me, and I have like a math brain. I was a computer programmer. I don't think building monsters is that hard. So I mean, I don't, I do not bemoan the fact that monster creation rules are missing as much as other people, but I do definitely hear that people are like, well, how come, why can't I build this monster? And I think it's, yeah, I don't know. I I am less brouhaha about that particular brouhaha.
Well, hot take number 4 for me or
Yeah, right,
3.
exactly. Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so
Monster
one,
creation rules missing aren't that big a deal. Yeah, it's like,
I don't mind that they're not there. I just think it's weird they're not there. But I think part of the reason they're not there is because the monsters in this book wouldn't marry to the rules no matter how they built them, because
sure,
they don't build them that way.
right. They probably don't have a methodology.
They
Yeah,
don't have a methodology that they
yeah.
can outline because
I,
they
yeah,
don't always follow that, which is fine because that's what DMs do. But I think
well,
that's part of it is they're like, no matter what rules we put, there are going to be several monsters that don't fit. And then we have to explain why.
and then we have
So
to
let's
explain
just
why.
don't do
Yeah.
it.
And I can tell you that as somebody who has spent the last 2 3 weeks building a methodology for how to go ahead and build monsters,
It's
it's
hard.
really effing hard.
Yeah.
So I can
Yeah.
understand why they may not have one. So
Well, I do think if you're gonna, if it, it's worthwhile to have a set of rules and then just say, and this one breaks it for this narrative reason. I
yeah,
think that's worthwhile, but I don't think you wait till somebody asks you the question and distrusts you. I think when you show that thing, you make that statement. Now you don't necessarily put it in the printed maybe not in the released product, but you certainly put it in your press release. Like, hey, we built this really cool thing that fits very narratively. It's fair, it's balanced with the game, but doesn't necessarily follow the standard monster creation rules, and we're okay with that because it really plays well and play tested well.
yeah,
You say that in your press release. You say that for the content creators and those of us who spend our all of our valuable time paying attention to this stuff, right?
yeah.
We will hear that. The casual viewer is just going to say, was this monster cool or not? And I
Mhm.
think it's fair to do that.
Save it for the
In this
episode.
method.
I'm
Yep.
gonna stop you there. Save it for the episode. How's it?
Yeah. And I do
All right,
have more on that for later.
for the episode. Yeah. So, all right. Topic number 3 on the list here: the retooled CR levels. So I'll hop on this one. In general, so it is it's a pretty easy universal statement to say that the monsters in this book are stronger and more formidable than monsters in the 2014 book. They are in line with the increase in power that the players received, and have been receiving for several books for several years now. Starting pretty much with Tasha's like 4 years ago, players started getting increasingly more powerful, so that the monsters no longer were a challenge. So I think that they have gone back. They have retooled that. They have retooled it effectively. The bump in CR is nice. It is a way to go ahead and keep current with other products out there, which are not WotC products, but also have more formidable monsters. The retooling of CR levels, good thing, and they seem to be doing it. They're at least on the right track, if not perfectly perfect. And I think too that the diversity of monsters within a family that we see helps that also.
I would concur. I've got a lot more for the specific episode because there are examples of it. There's examples where I think they hit it right on the head. There's examples where I think they could have pushed it a little further. That's more for the deep dive, but on the surface level, these monsters hit like trucks. GMs need to be aware. If you were GMing, like I'm always adding extra because my players are always punching above their CR level, the expected CR level, I would not start any combat with 2024 that way. Even if you're using 2024 characters, if anything, our two playtests have shown us that 2024 monsters hit like trucks.
Yeah.
They can be, depending on the monster you're using, really swingy. And by the way, that's the definition of hard and deadly encounters. They can be swingy. That's what they're supposed to do.
Yep.
And they sure as heck do it.
Yeah, we touched on this a while back. I don't remember what episode or if it was even an episode that was going to go out. CR is an imperfect tool.
Yep.
It is better than nothing, but only just, in my opinion. I think it just sort of gives you something to start with. But there are so many other factors that cannot be quantified in a book like this because the makeup of your party, which classes they take, how good your players are at synergizing their abilities, what magic items you give them, what magic spells they have prepared, all of those things drastically change your average party level. And CR is based off of average party level. So average party level being almost like a nonsensical term.
Yep.
It makes it hard, but yes, you shouldn't throw this at your first level party. But really, once you get past level 5, it's just a shot in the dark.
Yep. I think that no point kind of illustrates that more, Michael, than the class warfare that just came out with Rangers, right? Where we totally unknowingly put ourselves into a lovely little cone. And when that young green dragon came down and tried to fricassee us, like that very easily could have been round 1 of a 2 or 3 round TPK if it had caught us all. And thankfully it didn't catch us all and we were able to go ahead and take it to the woodshed. But that breath weapon was no joke. Like it really,
But I do think you should front load your monster doing things because they're not going to be around long.
They're not gonna be around long.
That's the way the game works. So there's one of them and 4 of us, and some of us can do multiple things. And so, you need to use that breath weapon first, even if it only hits half the party, because it may not get a chance to do it again.
Yep. And if it recharges, then the chances are
do it again.
That's the swinginess of, I guess you guys all die.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the guidance that they provided explicitly in the opening of the book leans right into that. Mm-hmm. They tell you when using any of the monsters from this book, if they have a recharge ability, use it as often as you can. Yes. Period. In any round that they're not doing something that does more damage, use multi-attack every round.
Yep.
And that's it. That's how you get a monster to play at its CR. That's how you get a monster to be frightening.
Yep.
Hit them hard, hit them often, and hit them with the hardest thing you got.
Because that is the other thing about CR. One of the reasons why it doesn't work as well is because you have DMs who don't want a TPK, which is fair. I don't want to do that either. But then they're like, well, I will play suboptimally. Well, if you're playing suboptimally and the players are playing optimally, then your CR10 is actually a CR5. So,
yeah. And eventually your players are going to get bored of never being challenged.
Right.
I can tell you what made the Rangers exciting was the fact that I was almost the first person dead.
Yeah. We started out in a hole.
I had to,
and it was fun to try to climb out of.
Yep.
That is absolutely a play style that I enjoy, but it's not for everybody. It's not for every time. And that's why there's a DM, there's a person making choices behind the screen and not a computer program, in my opinion.
Yep. All
All right,
right.
moving on.
Last topic here. Uh, the backtrack on putting spells that factor into the action economy in the action section versus just a blanket spell list. I will save my hot take on this
Ooh.
because I think I figured out why they did it. But I also really want to go ahead and hear kind of what your thoughts are on that. I think backtracking on this says a bunch of different things, but now I
Mhm.
understand why they did it, and I'm less kind of fiery about it as much as I would have wanted it. So
I honestly think that what they were trying to do was do what content creators have been speaking about for a while. What we have talked about wanting is, pardon me.
it's live radio, y'all.
Yep. Uh, we have always wanted stat blocks that were easier. That the easier a stat block is to run, the more diverse and number of stat blocks we can run in an encounter. If stat blocks are complicated, if we have to look up multiple things, go to multiple pages, we are either not using those things or we are taking 15 hours to prep, hence burnout, or we're simply going to cut it down to the easiest stuff to use, which makes our game seem samey.
Yep.
Those are none of those are good pathways to
And
take,
isn't using the monster optimally.
Right.
and is not using the monster optimally or the cadre of monsters optimally for the environment or for the story. So I think what they were trying to do back in Morden Cadence with varying degrees of success was eliminate that problem. If it causes damage and it takes an action, put it in the action. If it does a specific a kind of effect and it requires a bonus action, put it in the bonus action. If it does a certain thing but it's only a reaction, put it in the reaction. It's just easier. And then you tailor all those things to just those things. I think the goal was any of those, what I will loosely call, and we'll get into more detail in future episodes, flavor spells, things that they don't do in combat, but things that would come up when that monster is in a social encounter or is in a exploration encounter at other points in your adventure. Those things need to be there also, but they can just be in a spell list. And I think that would have been the perfect situation. For whatever reason, lack of trust in WotC, lack of consistent execution over all the products that came after Morgan Cadence have led to a mixed bag of sometimes they did it, sometimes they didn't. And the complete, and I think, huge problem of putting out UA and doing a survey 30 days later, which means nobody's playtesting it. They're simply reading it and answering it. At least no the wider audience. There's no great grand community playtesting going on in 30 days. It's not happening. It's just not. Maybe one or two, maybe some person has, maybe they got a broken leg and they can play 15 times to play test a given thing.
Unless you have a podcast and we get together for 3 or 4 hours every Tuesday night to go ahead and record,
Right.
and maybe
Yeah.
we go ahead and run a scenario at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. But even then, we struggle with getting that done before the surveys do. Right. And so I think the answer is they just didn't execute it well and be consistent with that vision. So by the time this came out, they had enough negative about it that they said we can't afford more bad press. Let's just backtrack and leave good enough as is. And I think that's disappointing because I do find unless you're playing digitally, some of these spell lists and stat blocks are really difficult to manage on paper. I go to a con, I don't have ready access to my phone or my laptop, and I could. I just don't like doing that. It distracts me from the table when I'm running other than a VTT game. I am not looking up 15 spells all the time, and there's no hope that they're going to be putting out 2024 spell cards, which I would then say, okay, I could use those. If they gave me a physical tool that was easy, these are the 5 spells for this monster, I deal them out or whatever. And yes, I could copy and paste and I could build all that, but I just spent $70 on a book. I don't want to go print and spend $70 on ink to do what could have been in the book.
Mhm.
And I think that's my issue with it. I really think spell lists make it harder to run at the physical table, but because it's highlighted and it's D&D Beyond, it's easy. So I can use it like this, VTT, no problem. table,
As
not
epic as
good for
that
me.
rant was, I'm going to need you to remember exactly what you said for the next episode, so we can go ahead and put it in there because that was
Yep.
fantastic. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, this is kind of a preview of what we're going to be talking about in that episode. Remember that that episode will be out not this coming Friday, but the Friday after, because this Friday we go to a very silly place with some friends as we talk about the new Monty Python TTRPG that just came out. But if you want to hear the episode that we're talking about tonight early, remember you can always go ahead and check it out on Patreon, www.patreon.com. Like friend of the show, Dave Rideout, who's over there in the comments. Hi again, Dave.
Hey,
Thank you.
thanks for being here.
Which he sent another comment also that said he totally agree that the dragon art is chef's kiss, which so clearly a man of refined taste
Yes.
and
Yes.
excellent
A
constitution. So,
connoisseur
yeah.
of the dicey
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is our kind of like little live looking. We want to do a little bit of looking because the Monster Manual is very exciting. Lots of people are talking about it, but we're going to go ahead and step aside here and kind of talk about it in a little bit more detail. So if you have specific things that you want to see in there, make sure you drop it in the comments. We'll be doing a bunch of yeah, we do this kind of stuff all the time. So, yeah. Gentlemen, pleasure as always. Hope everybody out there
Of course.
enjoyed. Like I said, please check us out on Discord. Check us out the website, www.ttjourneys.com. All the information for how to go ahead and follow us on all the socials is right there. Yeah, and don't forget to like and subscribe to YouTube also because we're trying to go ahead and push out a bunch more video. Michael, you guys are going live again tomorrow night too.
Tomorrow night, another
Yeah.
synergy session, or what do we call it? Adventure a la carte.
I like
Thank
it.
you,
Yeah,
Tilly. So we'll be looking at a pack of Magic the Cards, trying to come up with a kind of an on-the-spot adventure or campaign. It's a ton of fun, and we love audience participation on
I
these
always
as
loved that
well.
concept. It was such a great concept. That's
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So we're gonna go ahead and step aside and record. We're gonna pull that rant out of Lewanika's brain again, so we can have it for the other episode there instead of just the preview version that we got now. So yeah.
And comment below over under how many hot takes that episode will
Yeah.
have, or I don't
Did
we
we
might break
hit
it into
6?
multiple.
Did we hit 6?
Did we
I
hit
know
six?
I
like we
had
did.
one.
I think we got
Yeah.
you had one which got us to 5 because we
Yeah.
had 4, and then I think my rant on the spell action stuff it would qualify as a hot take.
Probably,
Yeah.
yeah.
I know I was
You
heated.
know what? Just to go ahead and make sure that so right now it's a push. So I want to go ahead and make sure that all of our over friends, we don't want to make sure that the house winds up with any money. So I'll go ahead and push it to the over. I think the reason why they backtracked is because they don't know what they're doing. I think honestly, like you don't put out playtest material saying that spell lists are going to do one thing and then put a different thing out in the book unless you freaked the f out about something. And the fact that they were still writing this book after the DMG came out is troubling.
Mm.
So, but production
Agreed.
timelines being what it is, maybe this book wasn't done a year ago, but yeah, it is that's a very interesting state of affairs. So
That would have been a very difficult thing to backtrack on, by the way. So while I agree with you that they may not have known what they were doing with that, but I would say that would have been hard to have made that decision in November for a book that got released in February.
Yeah, when we do the full, I mean, they released playtest material with it broken out, so it wasn't like they didn't have it at least on the drawing board.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
yeah. So anyway, we'll get more into my thoughts on why that particular issue happened in the next episode. So we hope to see you there. Yeah, thanks very much for checking us out live.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, we'll see you again soon.
See you soon.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, all.